Welcome, Sue, to the Jacob Edwards Library.
Hello, Margaret. Thank you for having me.
So can you talk a little bit about your practice and what informed this particular show?
Sure. The work that I'm showing here at the library spans several years. Started out with me making environmental statements, which is where my heart lies. The earlier work is pretty angry, and over time, while working on that, I found a few authors that I loved that kind of shifted me into a more reverent place in how I wanted to present my thoughts and my ideas about the environment. So this sculpture group over here, I call it the Garden of Smoke and Shadows. It kind of epitomizes a smoke firing technique that I learned that actually ends up burning pieces of botanical matter into the clay. How I start is that I will make the piece that I want to do polished and smooth. I will bisque fire it, but just sort of gets the clay to a point where it won't fall apart if it gets wet. And then after that, I can actually take it and glue leaves, botanical matter, some feathers to the clay itself, dip it into a slurry that is made with a specific clay recipe. It dries and cracks onto the clay while it's firing. It's fired in, more often than not, a trash barrel. A couple of the bigger pieces I had to dig a pit. So the piece itself is surrounded in sawdust, leaves, different organic matter. And as it burns down, it's burning the botanical matter that's under that clay slurry. It goes right into the clay. It becomes a part of the clay surface. And then afterwards, it's just really fun to take and chop all the dried and cracked clay off and see what's under there, see what I got. So what you'll see is on these pieces, the cracks are all just from that layer of mud drying and cracking. There's lots of techniques here, but that's the one I think that really sets the tone for the largest group of work here.
So you're talking here about using nature and stuff that's from nature. And then I see that you have other pieces that are much more man-made, such as the pieces with the, over here, this small piece. So just a contrast, the softness and the smoothness of maybe what you have here with the botanicals, and then something that's a lot more edgy. And is there
both? There is, and both the mindset and the technique changed. On this particular piece, the clay is burnished and it is smoke fired, but it's done with a completely different mindset. That particular piece is called Under My Skin. And it's got a lot of stainless steel and copper hardware in it, and I think the title kind of speaks for itself about my attitude in that piece, whereas these forms and this grouping were made with the idea of getting people to relate to forms in nature, plant forms, animals, on a more human level, which is why the hand shapes, and I put little spirit faces into quite a few pieces. That kind of relates to the Native American philosophy that everything is inspirited, and that sort of reverence for the environment, for living things around you, sort of a respect for them, and for me it's an intrigue. It's not super easy to shape the piece, but for me it is a logical process. I draw, I paint, but both of those for me get to a point where it's too much thinking, and I feel like I can make my point much better if I can just get my hands in there and form it and say, look at this, or look at all sides of this. That's the other part of it for me. So the forming isn't so hard that it stops me, but it takes time, I think, is the main thing. And getting a feel for the clay in order to shape what I want.
What got you started in ceramics? I mean, did you start in like, say, fine art or something like that and move into ceramics, or what?
Since high school, I've had my hands in ceramics and clay. I grew up in a family of DIYers and very capable sort of tradesmen. And my mother would sew, and I think being the youngest of 6, I just always wanted to be different, and clay had a little bit of a exotic air to it for me. So in high school and in college I swore I am never getting into clay. Too much equipment, too much money, takes up too much room. And over time, I got back to it, collected piece by piece anything like a kiln or a wheel, and here I am. One of my professors in school, always a sculpture professor, always said that it's like really important to live with sculpture. So when you say something about, you know, the librarians being in an environment with it, I appreciate that. Really, ideally for any art, living with it and being around it is the way to get to know it. And I grouped these pieces together with the blue. When you look close, there's a very detailed sort of a key pattern in the blue. And for me, that has like many layers of meaning. It's a Japanese key pattern. I'm an Air Force brat, and when I was very young, we lived in Japan, and all the traditional arts call to my heart. But here I use blue, the blue key pattern, in terms of water and healing. For me, they kind of overlap. That was one of the first pieces that I did with it. We live near a pond, and I was thinking about, like, the geese are around, and they're making the beach dirty, and the leaves are falling and they're making the water dark. But at the same time, that water is perfect. It's what water needs to be. It's giving life. It's doing everything you want it to, even if it's dark. So that's why I put like the fresh blue dots on there. Like, it may look dark to you, but it's still fresh. It's life-giving and it's beautiful. This one was water, air, and fire. The bird feathers are air. This was me very much in a mindset of having looked at a lot of Native American work and dealing with elements and pot forms, and I love to carve. So this piece just kind of came together organically. This was a funny and odd piece. I have a couple of pieces in a series with it. I started work on this piece just before the tsunami hit Japan, if you all remember that. I don't know what was going on, but this is a traditional sort of doll form that you find in Japan. Different regions have their own style of kokeshi, and that's another element that kind of I've played with over time in lots of different ways. She's relatively happy there, riding on top of that wave. It's a mystery to me, the timing for me making that piece when the tsunami happened. And with these, it was about, I was taking, the burnt clay, the delicate nature of the printing on the surface of the clay, and thinking about, obviously, the delicate twigs in nature, wildfires, and the rebirth after. This one is about, the autumn leaves falling off the trees, but they're gold because they are just, they're money. They're the life of the tree's just giving up its life, but they're going to go make, tree mold and fertilizer for the coming seasons. This was a very angry piece. This was dealing with horrible headlines, horrible news, pre-COVID, and thinking about my mother's heart, my kids' future, any mother's heart, Mother Nature's heart. So that was all the swords and arrows coming at you. I sort of used hardware to symbolize that. And then on the inside the mother's heart, inside her space, is all that healing energy, that protective energy, which is why we've got the blue key pattern in there again. The top part of the heart was smoke-fired, kind of like tying it to nature and the earth. So lots of symbolism there, and I think with any of these pieces, anyone can sit with it and just sort of see how it hits them. I hope I gave enough food in each piece to let you all just kind of react and have your thoughts about it. 2 more angry pieces. This one is titled Spill, for oil spills. And this one is Acid Rain, for obvious reasons. Kind of literal, but at the same time, I hope pretty and appealing to draw you in.
We should mention as well that a lot of the pieces have pieces of poetry attached to them. And I think that's wonderful that, you know, you've influenced, like the literary influence as well.
The idea here was to set an atmosphere for you as you're viewing them, because I don't think of my words as being very cohesive to describe my work. But I thought if I shared some of these snippets of thoughts, you can call them poetry if you want. I don't know if I'm...
Well, stream of consciousness, how's that?
There you go, that's good. But I did want to include it because I felt like it comes the closest I ever have to sharing with what I feel about the work. And here we're at the back side of the Garden of Shadow and Smoke, and kind of pointing out why I want people to see all sides of a piece. It's the rare piece I would do that I think of as having a back and a front. It's a thing. And I should point out our little pangolin here holding the hand grenade. That's another angry piece. A pangolin is, you know, a threatened creature here on the planet, totally gentle, skittish, unusual, beautiful, and they are harvested for their scales for aphrodisiacs, which just, I can't imagine. Yeah, so that piece is owned by a person who loves the pangolin so much, she takes the hand grenade off of it when it's in her home. The ideas on this one, I love bird forms, but a lot of times I feel like the Native Americans do it best. I just can't quite capture it. So I decided to go ahead and incorporate the face like I do on my other pieces that I'm giving spirit. It worked a little differently, but what was going on is birds hatching out around me and me just being in awe of how hard they work to feed their babies. As a parent, I miss my babies. Anytime I get together with my kids is just, I love it. I love it. And so that's a big part of my thought going on with Mama Bird here and her fledgling. These two really do have sort of a clear storyline for me. I can do this, no one else can. The little heads have a tiny bit of life to them. I'm not sure how I thought anybody would be able to see that without doing the thing you're not supposed to do with sculpture. But it's the spring awakening and the winter sleep, thinking about the Native American storytellers, and in the winter times when a lot of the stories got shared and learned. And then the spring awakening is just always a matter of celebration, and I think probably is where you create stories. Stories happen and then stories get related, which is how those two work. And these two trees are dancing. They have spirit faces you'll see on this side, and they too are a bit kinetic. And there again, the idea is I like to think of trees having a life of their own. They dance, they whistle, they communicate. And the laughing grasses, when you're out there and you hear the wind for the grass. It's no better way to imagine the spirit in the plant life, the animals around. And this is a migrating bird with flowers smoke fired onto it only because of they're beautiful and it's beautiful. And the black piece are the clouds it's flying over. And then as we come around, I am playing with the form of the hands again, like I did in the Garden of Shadow and Smoke.
I just thank you very much for sharing with us for the
You're
month
very
of
welcome.
July. And I'm just so pleased that we could do this. So thank you.
Me too. Thank you, Margaret. It's a great opportunity. I appreciate it.